Should we begin? Can I allow everyone?
I'm sorry.
Should we begin? Should I allow everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just rename you. Should I put OK Credit as well, or should OK Credit?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session with Harsh. And thank you so much for joining in live. It's Saturday, it's a weekend, and it's a pleasure having you all discussing about startup and entrepreneurship. So feel free to turn on your cameras. I'll give a brief around the structure of this session, and then we can move on. It will be a lot interactive so that you can ask questions to Harsh directly after a few minutes of putting the structure forward. Great, thank you. So moving forward, hi Harsh, welcome to Xartup Fellowship. Hope you are doing well today.
Yeah. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. So moving forward, we had a discussion around your early life joining IT Kanpur, the kid who never planned something as such in a solid way. And then moving forward to your 0 to 1 story with Nishi, with a few ventures that you built across. So let's start from there. Which ventures were you building before OK Credit? What were your learnings from that? And how did you implement that in building OK Credit?
Sure. See, so as I spoke last time, Mishi was our first startup, right? And the idea there was for us to learn programming, right? Like we wanted to build something because we knew that, we have to learn programming if we have to build a startup. Because at that time we were very young, we did not have the capital to hire other people. So that was the idea with the first startup. We did well. We learned the basics of programming, how to build an app, a server and all of those things. In the second startup, Clan Out, again, as I said, we were very attached with Mishi, but it didn't work. So, like more like a rebound, we, very quickly jumped into another startup that we wanted to do. And the problem, like we wanted to solve was that we usually got bored at home because it was a very monotonous life, right? Like we only had one group of friends and we were always hanging out with them. We wanted to hang out with more people, and we thought of building a app where we can see what other people are doing. Basically, app for house parties and events, essentially. So we could see what other people were doing and could join them. But again, like there also, I think like because what we really learned was that we have to be super close to the users. We spent 6 to 7 months building the app and debating all features and building a whole extensive application with so many features, but we never really were close with our users. We never spoke to them or, understood what they really wanted. Like we always put what we thought they wanted first. And, so I think that was our major learning from Clanout, that you have to be super close to users. And, because many times we are working on hypothetical problems, which we think are problems, but are not really problems for other people. So that was our learning from there. Then, like we got really involved with blockchain technology because that was really new at that time. And because we had these two failures with B2C startups, we thought that, hey, we are more techies, and so this B2C stuff is not for us. We should probably do more technological stuff. And that is sometime when we explored a lot of these upcoming technologies like VR, like computer vision, and like blockchain. And we settled on blockchain because we thought that was very exciting. It was also very new. There were not a lot of people who knew that, and we thought we could build our expertise there and build a business for ourselves. So we got into that heavily, and I did a lot of cryptocurrency stuff. We did multiple projects for like banks, other multinational companies, more pilot projects. And that is when we realized that there's a lot of hype around this technology. This technology, again, it's a tool without a problem to solve. And we also realized that everyone in these big companies just wanted to do pilots to showcase to their management that they are doing something about this technology. But in reality, there was no intention, there was no problem that they were identifying to solve through this. So we spent some time there. It helped us make some money because finally someone was paying us, and we were anyway out of money because we had quit our jobs very early on. So it helped us make some money, but we realized that there's not a lot of work we can do here. And um, that is when like we started seeing a lot of these Y Combinators startup school videos, reading a lot of essays by Paul Graham, and then we sat back and realized that uh, you know like we have to solve a problem, right? And we like the best way is to solve your own problem. And we sat down, we discussed among ourselves our problems. We interviewed a lot of friends, a lot of family people about what problems they faced, and then we shortlisted 3-4 problems to work on. And then from there, OkCredit was born.
That sounds like an interesting journey. So you mentioned about Paul Graham, you mentioned about talking to users during your first startup as well as a takeaway in terms of learning. So can you shed more light over there in terms of the early stage entrepreneurs who are trying to build a startup, trying to work on their hypothesis? What did you learn from Y Combinator in general?
Yeah. But by the way, there are some people in the chat who are saying they can't hear anything. So,
yeah.
But is it because I can hear you well, and can other people hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Great. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. Like, your question is like, how should like one start their startup journey or the 0 to 1 journey, right?
Exactly.
So what I have learned is to focus on one user or customer, just one, right? And uh, because many times when we think of say 1 million users or 1,000 users, we get very distracted by the number of things we can do and the number of edge cases we will face and the number of new things that can be done. But I think at the start it makes a lot of sense to just focus on one person, or like if you're or one enterprise, like depending on who you are solving it for, but just focus on that one customer, right? And work with them like very actively to understand the problem they are facing, validating the problem, building a solution for them, and seeing that they are finally using your solution, and best if they are paying you for making that solution. Because once you solve it for one user, right, that is when like I think it becomes much easier for you to then find more users or more customers like them, right? Because you just solved it for one person. Like what I've seen many times founders do wrong, or like basically not when it doesn't work out well for them, is because they have a very broad vision, or like they're not prioritizing well, right? Like they're thinking about a lot of stuff which you can think later once you have one customer with whom you have identified the problem and they're using your solution. That is when you can go. So I think like that's for me like works the best if I'm working on anything new.
Makes sense, Serge. Pretty much in line with Paul Graham's essay on two things that don't scale, I guess, the way he has mentioned, focusing on few user persona in the early days. Moving forward, how was your Y Combinator application journey, and how helpful was Y Combinator for you?
I think Y Combinator has been immensely helpful for us, especially in our early days, because as I said, like we learned a lot by reading their essays, by seeing their videos. Like that helped us a lot. And even before that, like I think so we applied to YC 3 or 4 times. Like before we got selected, and every time I think we filled the YC application, it gave us a lot of clarity on what we are building. I think their questions are designed that even if you just write down answers and do not apply, then also you will get a lot of clarity on what you want to do, and like whether it's a feasible idea, whether this is going to work. So I think their application is very nice just to even answer those questions, if not to apply. So yeah, so I think like for us, filling those applications helped us gain clarity on like our product, our business idea. Their essays and videos are great. After we got selected, and like this was after 3 or 4 times, I think like what it really helped us was like one of course is the brand value of Y Combinator. That if it gets associated with you, your fundraising, your hiring, things become easier. And second is the community they have, where you get access to a lot of other founders, and especially if you are a B2B company, I think that's great because you get access to say hundreds of startups in your batch who can all be potential customers, and you can build relationships and get your initial product off the ground just using that community. So yeah, I think that's the positive I can think of.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Moving forward, you were onto your 0 to 1 journey. You got into Y Combinator, and then how was the growth journey for OkCredit? What were the learnings from your 0 to 1 stage, and what were the learnings from your 1 to 10 stage? What was different in these two scenarios?
So I think like the major learning in 0 to 1 versus 1 to 10 has been that in 0 to 1 we were super focused and super and also like because we did not have much money, so it forces you to prioritize a lot and also do things in a way that are very cash efficient or frugal, right? But in our 1 to 10, once we got access to money, I think we lost focus early on. We like because we had a lot of money, we could hire more people and do more things, and we lost our focus and started doing so many things at once that hey, we will do 2 new revenue lines, or 2 new apps. We will spend a lot on marketing, we will hire extra people than we need. And so I think like that was one of the biggest learnings, that even when you have cash, availability of cash, it still makes sense to be very focused, because like many times when we think that funding can really help a startup, but funding can also really damage a startup if the startup loses its focus and does many things at a time, hires people, and that can be damaging for a company. Uh, so I think that's my major learning from 1 to 10, that I think going back, if I were to do anything different, I would remain super focused, only hire the kind of people we need, only work on very prioritized list of ideas, and use my cash more wisely.
Makes sense, Harsh. and pretty candid journey that you have shared. Tried building 5 startups almost before building OkCredit. Applied to Y Combinator for 3 times or 4 times before getting into over there. Right? So the story of failure is real, and after that, the success is also eventually great because you have now sort of pioneering the industry, one of the biggest player in the industry right now in your own domain after raising $90 million. So for the folks over here who are building their startup, who are the first time founders or second time founders, it's been a great learning for sure, looking at your journey, reflecting back upon that. But moving forward, I think for the employees itself within OkCredit, you have created an environment with work from anywhere. Uh,
Yes.
would you like to share something around the way you hire people, the kind of people you look for,
Yeah.
and the culture that you have built, and how were you able to do that?
Yes. Sure. So see, like for us, like we pride ourselves in trusting our employees a lot. Right? We when we hire someone, we look for people whom we can trust, right? And by trust, I mean like, they will not, because we give people a lot of freedom in terms of the way they want to work, the things they want to work on, like from where they want to work, the kind number of leaves they can take. We do not count anything, right? Like as long as you are uh, basically fulfilling your job, you're doing what is required out of you. So I think for us that is one very critical thing. And if we can find people whom we can trust, then we give them full accountability, full ownership. And when people see that, I think they respect that a lot, because they feel that the trust is reciprocated. Basically, when you trust someone and they really feel that I can trust you in good times and bad, they will reciprocate that and like be very loyal to the company. So I think that's one critical pillar for our culture. The other again is transparency. Like we are transparent with whatever the situation is, good, bad. We like we are very consistent with like our all hands meetings which happen every month. And every month we have the whole company comes together, we discuss everything. Like we have presentations where we discuss each and every product, how are things going, what are the challenges. People feel very comfortable asking tough questions, and we are very transparent with people. So and then continuous improvement. I think these are the three pillars that we are transparent, we trust people, and then we everyone, we just show that we are getting better. Even sometimes it can be 10% better, sometimes it's just 2% better, right? But the focus is on continuously improving ourselves, because we believe that if we can like make these minor improvements month over month, in the long term, in 4 or 5 years, we'll be like a much better self of ourselves. Right. So I think these are the three pillars for our culture, which we really stress on always.
Right, right. We are getting a bunch of questions in the chat box. One is in line with what we are recently discussing. Any suggestions on how to hire the first few employees, how to find the right candidates, where to look, etc. So if you can share some anecdotes from your experience and share some advice.
Yeah. So, like again, I think the first few employees, it's great if you can hire from your network, because as students or as colleagues, you would have met people who you really think are very talented, you can trust, and can have a great time working together. So I really advocate hiring the first few people from your network, because like early stage startup is a very roller coaster journey. There may be times when things really get bad, and if you know someone from before, you have worked with them, and you know how they behave in bad times, I think that's a major thing, uh, because you're surely going to have bad times, right? And you need people who can be with you, and who how they will behave in bad times. So I think hiring first few people from your network makes a lot of sense. And where to look, of course, your college, your workplaces, people you may have come across whom you really like working with. So convincing them to join you, I think, is a great thing. And it also gives a lot of signal to other people saying that, hey, people whom they have worked in the past really trust these people, and are willing to come work for a very risky early stage startup because they have trust. So that also gives a good signal to other people that this guy is trustworthy and other people are trusting him.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Is it the same advice that you would give to someone looking for hiring a co-founder, or who is a solo founder looking for pairing up with someone with complementary skills?
Yes. So yeah, again, I think co-founder though, again, should definitely be from your network. And again, I might be wrong, but this is what has worked for me. That if your co-founder is someone whom you have known really well, because there will be a lot of good and bad times, conflicts, position of responsibilities, etc. And you want someone whom you can again trust and know how they will behave, their values in bad times. So for me, I think if I were to get a co-founder, I'd always go with someone whom I have known for so many years and can trust them. I am not a believer of those finding co-founders, and maybe that works. I'm sure it has worked for some people, but it doesn't make sense to me.
The probability is also very low in that scenario. Moving forward, we have an interesting question. Subhash is mentioning you have written a LinkedIn post recently where you mentioned about your growth journey, where you wanted to get into 60 plus million transactions a month, expand to 500 plus cities. Then moving forward, his question is about bootstrapping. If he's bootstrapping a venture, then is this kind of growth or scale even possible?
Yes. Yeah, so I totally agree. And for us, if again, as I said, if we had money, we would not have innovated at that time. Most of the software companies which were selling to MSMEs, their standard strategy was that they would hire software salespeople, right? They would go out in the market, sell their product, and that was the default strategy. And of course, it required a lot of money to scale it to 500 cities. But because we did not have any money, and we also did not have experience of working in a software company before, we innovated a lot. And finally, we came up with virality features within our app, basically product-led growth, where we could expand to these many cities without spending money. So the way it worked was that if I am a wholesaler and if I'm recording credit on 10 retailers, all of those 10 retailers, we used to send a WhatsApp from the wholesaler's mobile that, hey, Harsh wholesaler has recorded 1 lakh rupee ka udhar on you. Right. So now these retailers, they automatically, when they received that WhatsApp, they, thought, ki, Acha, what is this? And either they would call the wholesaler and ask, or they would, just click on the link and understand themselves. But sooner or later, they'll realize, yeah, this is a good tool for me also, because I am also giving credit to my customers. So they'll start using it. And that is how, we grew from 1 to 10, 200, 2000, in the initial days. So, we could innovate and we could find some organic ways to grow, and that helped us even when we did not have money to scale up.
Interesting. So in this scenario where customer acquisition costs for a lot of B2C brands, let's say, are going up, and when you are talking about organic referral-led growth or virality in the product itself, that seems interesting. Would you like to shed more lights on how can early stage entrepreneurs look at these kind of viralities while building their product?
So I think you always have to think of it as a multiplayer game, that how how can my product, uh, have some social angle or some, this communication angle where, uh, if one person is using it, 10 other people get to know about it automatically, or find some utility that they also want to join the product. So I always think of it as, rather than creating a one player game, try to create a multi-player game. Uh, right. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, very, very
And,
interesting example in terms of multiplayer versus one player. Makes sense. One more question is from Jay Kumar, who is putting a paradox into the picture. Is it's like bootstrapping versus VC money? So in the early stages, is it advisable to raise VC funding and go for aggressive expansion, or slowly accelerate your startup to millions of customers and reinvest profits into the companies?
Yeah. See, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's not one or zero. I think like in life, the right answer always is balance. That how can you balance both the stuff? That even if you are raising VC capital, you do not burn aggressively, and do a balanced growth where you are, as I said, using your money wisely, and growing so that, uh, uh, you know s- basically, there's pros and cons of both things. If you're just bootstrapping, it will take you a long time to get to a large scale. If you are completely focused on VC funding, you might get there fast, but then that will have a lot of other consequences for your startup, where you diluted a lot, you would be extremely dependent on your VC partners. So I think it always makes sense to have a balanced approach, that you are bootstrapping until you are confident that you can use the external money wisely, and that even if that stream of money vanishes tomorrow, if VCs are not giving you any more capital, you can still build your startup without that. So yeah, I think make a balance makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense. One more question, quite in line with this. How do you look at equity? Should you save it for later and dilute later, or it should be a slower in present while raising funds to move fast? So, should we dilute equity a lot in the beginning to just move fast, or should we save it for later growth, later
I think,
stage?
again, as I said, it's a balance, right? Like you have to decide, you have to play it a few years out or a few rounds out, that hey, like suppose my startup, I will definitely need to raise 3 or 4 rounds, right, until I become ready. Then if in each round, if I do 10%, 20%, 50, where will I end at that time? And at that time, will investors be controlling my company, or I will be controlling my company? And then you have to play the scenario out a few years, and then do the backward working from there, that how much am I willing to dilute today, if I have to reach there. And that, I think that backward working really helps to have a long term picture of where you want to be.
Makes sense. Makes sense. One more question from Satya is around growth. How does focusing on one customer work in case of B2C business? So it is coming from the perspective that you shared, while focusing on users helped you a lot. So he's trying to understand how does focusing on one specific customer can help a B2C business where the number of users are huge, variables are huge, they might
No,
have different
yeah,
needs.
so I think, see, even though we are working for small businesses, but in a way we are a B2C business, because like our business owner is a proprietor who is a single man running his shop, right? So in a way, he's a single customer whom we are dealing with, right? Like we are not dealing with an enterprise. So even in the starting, the way it worked for us was that we worked with one store, one kirana store, who was right outside our apartment, and just focusing on him helped us, like develop very quick iterations, because we could quickly build the app in one day, and go to him and say ki, hey, the app is ready. Fir he used it. Sometimes he didn't understand कि यार ये कैसे करना है. Oh no, I'm not comfortable with this. we could very quickly take the feedback, go back, work on our app. Next day, we are giving him a new version. And finally getting him to use the app. So, that just staying with one person for 1 month really helped us build our product very faster. We could iterate much faster. And, and finally, we could convince him to use our app for all his credit transactions. So, and once he was satisfied, he himself referred us to another shop owner, in another locality. So, so I think it works, right? Like even if you're a B2C business, it's not necessary that you have to focus on 100 users at the start. Just focus on one user, focus that are you solving his problem? Because especially in B2C, if you can solve for one person, the population of India is so huge that I'm sure you will find 1 million people with the same problem. So in India, it's not about scale that, hey, will I find 1 million users? You will if you are solving a real problem.
Great. Was it really one Kirana shop that you are focusing on? And
yes, food choice. For the first 1.5 months, we just worked with one store. The name was Food Choice, right outside. And once we had onboarded him completely, only that is when we moved to other shop owners.
Great. Was the virality or product-led growth that you're talking about something you figured out during that time itself and working in that shop?
Yes. And the way we figured that out was because we were his customer. And while we were solving for him, we also had our perspective, a customer's perspective, that what do I want? I want transparency also, right? That how much money, credit he's writing on me. So we solved for that. And if eventually that became our growth hook, that, the shopkeeper is writing, but I'm also getting an SMS, right? And that became our viral hook.
Makes sense. One more interesting question is over here, because you come from an IIT background. So does this IIT, IIM tag matters in entrepreneurship while raising funds or building a startup?
To be perfectly honest, it definitely gives you an advantage because of the network that you have. You can reach out to people and they'll be more open helping you. And second, also because, like that's the way the world works, right? It's little unfair, but they attribute your future success to your past success, right? That, hey, this guy has done well in the past. He has gone through, these tough examinations, and maybe this person will be able to, do it again in the future, because it's a very hyper competitive world, right? Startups. So, I would love to say that it doesn't matter and it should not matter, but unfortunately, that's not the way this world works. And it definitely has an advantage if you have a brand name associated with you.
Yeah, going back to the concept of perceived value, I think tags in a way create that perceived value. Around entrepreneurs as well.
Yes.
A lot of cases. As it goes.
But having said that, while it gives you an advantage, I wouldn't say that's a guarantor of success. Right? There are many IIT, IIM, or whoever MIT, Harvard folks who have tried building startups but have not been able to do that. And there are many other folks who have not come from these branded institutions but have been able to build superb companies, right? So it's not a guarantor, but yes, in early stage, it at least has its advantages.
Makes sense. Moving forward, how exactly should someone determine if an idea is working and should move to a new idea? So pivot or stick, how should they decide?
Yeah, I think that's the toughest one, because when do you pivot? And I don't know, like it's I think like the major aim before you pivot is to find if the problem you are working on is a real problem, and if it is solved, how much value will be generated for that customer, right? Because if it's not a real problem, or if it's a problem but it's a minor problem that I can live with it, then maybe it's time to pivot, because it's better to solve problems that are that are massive, or that have like a higher value attached to the user. So I think that's the way to think about it. But I think it's a very tough one. I don't have a great answer, honestly, on when you pivot, because it always feels that I have given so much time into it, and I should give more, and I will reach there. But being brutally honest with yourself, and really you know drilling down on the problem you're solving, the perceived value it has for the user, and then seeing whether it makes sense for you to invest more time into it, is a way to go about it.
Yeah. Any anecdotes that you would like to share? Did you pivot in last 6 years of your journey within OkCredit?
Yeah, like even before that, as I said, we worked on different ideas, and every time you work on an idea, you get emotionally attached to it in a way, because you seem like it's an idea I've brought into this world. And and as an entrepreneur, because you are pitching so much to everyone, to customers, to your co-founders, to maybe interns you have, or to investors, everyone, sometimes subconsciously it gets into your mind that, hey, your pitch, you sometimes just convince yourself of the pitch, because you're pitching everyone, and it becomes very hard for you to be honest and rational about it, that, hey, there are some flaws in my idea as well. So I think I've faced this multiple times in my life, and it's always a very tough call, that whether we should move ahead or not. Because on the other side, we have so many stories of, how people persevered and, did not give up. And that is when they became so big, and, they could really make such big companies. So it's a conflicting thought of, those values of perseverance and not giving up, while also being brutally honest with yourself that, hey, is this something I want to really invest my time into? Um, so yeah, like,
Makes sense. It's a paradox,
yeah.
which will remain uh, like that. So moving forward, we have a lot of questions around investment raising, fundraising, and you being an active angel investor. So would like to know your perspective on those as well. One is around Kshitij, who is building a brick and mortar startup in Nagpur. He's in the healthcare segment. As a case, he is asking a question. He has seen models like FastCry scaling like crazy after raising VC round. He has a revenue of around $100,000 right now. So he wants to understand your perspective from an investor in terms of a brick and mortar model and how scaling works on that case.
Hmm. Yeah. See, again, I honestly have not invested in brick and mortar companies myself, so I do not understand them a lot. Neither have I built one myself. But I will tell you what I hear from other investors in the community about such businesses, especially these VCs, is this changes a lot, right? Of course, I'm talking about what I used to hear 2 years back, and now things are different. But what they always say is that these companies are heavily dependent on working capital, and the scalability is directly proportional to the kind of working capital you can get, right? So the uh, valuation jump in a few years, if it's a VC with, say, only 5 to 7 years of they have to return the fund, because they also promise to their LPs that, when will I return my fund? I'm taking, say, 100 CR from you. When will I return that to you, and what multiple? Right. So for many VCs, the return time is only 5 to 7 years, right? And they would rather allocate that capital to companies that has potential to grow much faster in those 5 to 7 years. But for investors who have the return time is longer, say 10, 15 years, or maybe for some funds, there's no return time, right? Like people say that we'll just hold as long as the company does well. So for them, it makes sense to invest in these companies or allocate capital, because if the model is good, it will take time, but it will become a huge success. So maybe it makes more sense to go out to such investors whose fund return timelines are not very short, are longer. But again, as I said, this was a conversation I had 2-3 years back, but now I think things are again changing. People are again getting more rational and balanced in terms of the scalability of a tech company, but also the profitability, or the real tangible value an offline business brings to the world. So people are getting more open. But I think that the biggest question is that this is superly dependent on working capital. The valuation jump may not be as much as I would like, because I have to return my fund after 5 years.
Makes sense. And Wonderfly is asking, you being invested in more than 30 startups, what is your investment thesis? And what are the main important points entrepreneurs should remember, or the steps that they should follow, or things that they should act on before pitching to a VC or angel investor?
I think, my investment thesis is, because I do not have expertise in any one industry, given, it's not that I am a seasoned professional having, 15 years experience in healthcare or something, that I know the industry in and out. My thesis is more like that if I instead of thinking why it would not work, I always think, if it works, how big can it become, right? That's my primary filter, that if this works, like whatever this founder is telling me, like if this turns out to be true, how big, massive impact can it have on the world? And if I think that yes, if this becomes true, it can have a massive impact on the society, or in general, I am very inclined to invest. But after that, my filter becomes that who is the founder, right? And I like to invest in founders who I think are better than me, right? Because what I have seen is that even when a founder stumbles across a good idea, right, which has potential, the startup journey is so difficult, right? It's a 7-10 year journey at least, right? And it is so difficult, it is so up and down, that many people, if they are not very strong about the mission, or very mission driven, they will give up. And even if that's a good idea, it then means nothing, right? So for me, like, the first filter is how big can this become if this becomes true, right? And second is, okay, is the founder someone who's better than me and will stick there for as long as necessary to make this a success? I think those are my top two filters, honestly.
Got it. Got it. Perseverance at its top, and we're looking for people who are actually
Mission-driven
good
people,
at it.
right? Mission-driven people who really want to bring this change into the world, who are very passionate about it, have some backstory of, why they really want to solve this problem. And like, my red flags are people who are just doing this to make a quick buck, or, just put this on your resume, that I'm a startup founder. So I think those are the kind of founders whom I typically would not like to invest in. If I can catch them, many times, of course, there have been times when founders have fooled me by showing that no, we are very passionate, mission driven, but later I realized, their uh, agenda is to just write it on your resume, and attend startup parties and tell everyone that they're a founder. So
Yeah, I have seen people doing this as well, going for Bangkok after raising their VC round using that. So yeah, I mean, I think you are pretty much clear about your thesis and the kind of people you are looking for. Moving forward, one more question in line with this is, how much role does a VC play in the growth of the startup? So what kind of role the investors can play in the growth of a startup?
I think a lot, right? Because and it both in good and bad, right? It's not always good. Like if you don't find the right partner, your company's growth can be completely hampered, because if your strategies don't match, if your values or even goals don't match, even when like you will have a very tough time navigating through that, and that will eat up a lot of your energy, right? So I think yeah, it's very difficult. Like I would say, like it plays a very big role, and in good side also, that if you have a partner who really aligns with you, has the right values, everything, then it compounds and you can just grow by leaps and bounds. So I would say having the right VC is like super critical for the growth of your startup.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like 1 + 1 11, or it simply goes 1 - 1 0 in some
Yeah.
scenarios if the partners are not aligned. Moving forward, a generic question, Harsh, what does a VC look for in general? Like you shared your own perspective, your own thesis. So what should the VCs look for in the founders who are building their businesses at an early stage? And how should these founders prepare? Founders who are building their businesses at an early stage, and should these founders prepare?
Yeah, again, there's no one answer here. Different VCs look for different things, and I think that is why we have multiple investors, because if there was one fixed criteria everyone judged you by, then there's no need for multiple investors. You can just have a supercomputer where you can fill up those inputs and it will give you a yes or no, right? So, but essentially, like, again, different people look for different things, but essentially what people are looking for are massive industries where you are solving a very critical problem which can have like massive value for the customers. And again, the founding team, are they capable of executing that vision, right? And yeah, I think, but again, like there are different VCs. Some VCs who would only prefer to have like a high pedigree founders, someone who have been in the industry for long, and or someone who's a top ranker from premier institute. So different VCs have different things. uh, yeah, but I think, like, if you can show that you have the ability to execute on your vision, and that vision is big enough, has a lot of value, then you have a good chance to land up someone or the other.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, uh, putting you back in the founder's shoes, I'd like to ask how and where should the early stage founders look for VC funding or look for angel investors? How should they approach it?
uh, uh, I think the different channels, one is your network, right? Like I'm sure there would be people in your network whom you have worked with or who know you, and can trust you, uh, right? And so that's the most like best way to get initial money, because like when in the early stages, only your friends, family, your network trusts you the most. But then otherwise there are a lot of these micro VCs, accelerators these days, where like you can directly apply, or even through LinkedIn or any other sources, try to make personal connections with those people, and then pitch your startup. But we have to understand that like it's again like any sales pipeline. We have to reach out to 100 people, and 10 will respond and 1 will convert. So uh, we have to be very perseverant. Like basically, like if we don't, like, we have to acknowledge the fact that it's not going to be an easy journey. When you are finding angel investors, you have to like make relationships with hundreds of people, and that is when maybe 10 people will give you the money.
Got it. Got it. Shire is sharing that you shared something on LinkedIn about you are living in shared chat office. So could you share some stories, some anecdotes around how difficult your journey was in the beginning?
Yeah, I would say, see, it was definitely very difficult. There were many times when we thought that let's give up. This is not for us. And but having the right co-founders really helped, because when whenever one person is down, the other two can pick him up, right? Because you're humans, right? Like we get these negative emotions, we feel low, but if you have the right support system at that time, it really helps. So I would say our journey was, like, of course, very difficult, because pivoting multiple ideas and seeing that your peers from college are earning so much money and doing so much things, while you are not earning money, and like your parents are telling you what are you doing, your friends are sometimes indirectly telling you what are you doing, you have the potential, you will get a job for this much, but it's it's gut wrenching, right? It sometimes, like, it feels like yaar main kar kya raha hu, kyun pagal hu, but that's it. That's why I say that, see, doing a startup is not for everyone, and it should not be glorified also, right? It's not कि मैं कोई startup कर रहा हूँ तो I am a very smart or big person, and someone who's doing a job is not. It's not, right? It's your personal preference. If it's not necessary to do a startup. I don't think doing a startup is a big thing or something everyone should do. But if you are someone who can't stop thinking about it in your head, if you're always thinking that I want to do a startup, you are not getting fun in other things, then you should go for it. But it's a tough journey. Uh, as I said, right, there were many times when we would have given up. Like I would say tens of times when we would have given up. But you know, something or the other happened. We got a ray of light from somewhere, and and my co-founders, many times my co-founders felt low, and that time I was positive, so I told them कि नहीं यार करेंगे. So बीच में हुआ था, there was this company which wanted to buy us out. We were working in blockchain, we were 3 people. They were saying कि hey, come to Silicon Valley, we'll give you very good salaries in dollars, सब कुछ. तो हम लोगों का हो गया कि यार हाँ, बहुत वैसे ही, it's been so long, our startups are not working, we are out of money, it's such a great opportunity, we can go to Silicon Valley, we can earn in dollars, and all of those. But then something happened and we rejected that offer, and today I'm so glad that we rejected that. um, Again, as I posted on LinkedIn, we faced this uh, we were out of money. We had only money for rent, but we also had to pay for servers. And so we thought that fuck it, let's like leave our house, let's pay for servers and stay in an office. And that was also very tough, there's hundreds of people in office, they are seeing you that who are these 3 people, they are sleeping on the floor all the time, they are eating our food. They are, like when many times when they come to office, we are already sleeping because we are working late in the night. So it's embarrassing, it's tough, but again, the world is not fair, right? Like it's not fair, and I think we have to acknowledge that.
Makes sense. There is a saying, right? Do something unusual to get something unusual. Though your journey has been like that, it might not be necessary, but the results are unusual, as we can see now, where OkCredit is, where you have even after all the results. Moving forward, Harsh, should you like to share something about your life? How do you manage your time? Any productivity stuff that you do? Any books, any inspiration that you have which has kept you going in the last few years?
Um, I think like earlier, I used to keep everything in my mind, right? Which I think was burdening me, like, because I always then and I have this weird thing where I want like control, and I always want to be on top of everything. So when I was keeping everything in my mind, I, like always kept on thinking subconsciously that, hey, do I remember everything? Am I not missing? Have I checked all the boxes? And that would take a lot of energy from me, even when it is not necessary. One of the very simple things that I've started doing since the last 3-4 years, and I've been doing it continuously, is that I make a to-do list, right? I write everything, like smallest of things there, and then my mind is clean, right? Like I don't worry about I'll forget something, or am I checking all the boxes. Once before I go to sleep or whenever I end my day, I just check out everything what I've done. If I realize that there are certain things which I'm not checking out, but they're always there, then I take a hard decision whether this is important for me or not. And if it is important, I make sure that I check that, I do that the next day. If I'm not doing it, I will just delete it. That okay. So basically prioritization and then keeping your mind clean. I think that really helps me to write down all this stuff and then just for like visit that list once or twice a day. And again, like being honest with yourself, that are you writing the most important things, or are you just writing the easy things, that you are happy that I made 10 things green, but it actually doesn't mean anything, because those things also don't matter. So yeah, I think that has helped me with my productivity.
Makes sense. Makes sense. There is a concept of open loops, right? I mean, David Allen has this book called Getting Things Done, where
Yeah.
he mentions that when we keep things in our brain, it creates open loops. I recently discovered, and it sort of helps a lot to note things down and keep a to-do list like you are talking about. Makes sense. Any final notes, Harsh, from your side? It has been a pleasure hosting you, learning about your life in a very candid way, learning about the way you build this venture with your perseverance and about your productivity, your life as well. Any final notes that you would like to share with the folks who are at the very early stage trying to build their venture right now?
I don't know, like I think like it's like if you're at early stage, I think like I just reiterate a few things I said, is like it really helps to be brutally honest with yourself. Many times, because you're pitching things to everyone, you tend to like make your mind also convinced that, hey, this is right, and you don't be honest with yourself. So I think that's super important. And second, being thick skinned is also very important, because as early stage founders, you'll get so many rejections, that it will like make you feel low, like question your self-worth. But just like I think acknowledging that it is a part of the process, and not taking them personally really helps. And then having the right support system, be it your co-founders or your family or friends, is also very important, because again, there will be times when you will like feel like giving up. But if you have someone who can show faith in you, you get that energy. That is very important.
Makes sense. Thank you so much again, Harsh. Thanks for doing this for all of us. Hopefully, it will be an inspirational story, the way you candidly shared everything for everyone who is building a startup right now or facing some troubles, because a lot of areas are covered in this last hour of discussion. So, thank you so much again. And for the folks, Harsh has entered into a new life. He recently got married.